Hello again. We are now on video number 13. Unlucky for some, but hopefully not for Ridzal Tayeb, who is an independent change management consultant in Indonesia. Ridzal asked, long question, from a CM point of view, would there be any circumstances when it would be justified to call an ad hoc steering committee meeting, okay, and with a purpose of stopping or abandoning a project? Of course, we have some data and evidence to base our reasons on, but what would these be? And in your experience, have you been in or seen such a situation? That's a long question, Ridzal, and a very interesting one. Going to be quite challenging to answer, but as always, I'm always up for a challenge, as you know. So let me start by saying the steering board will need to have some comprehensive information from the project to be able to make the decision to stop or abandon a project. Okay, so the first thing to consider is, what are the signs that may determine whether a project is in trouble and would require further investigation? Well, there are many, okay, which kind of range from unrealistic goals right from the start, no clear scope or insufficient understanding of the risks, and also the failure to manage expectations. And then some. Those are just a few. Right? But to stop or abandon a project in its entirety, there has to be a clear understanding of the consequences of not continuing with it. Having said that, in some cases, there may be reasons, strategic or otherwise, to persist with a project. You never know. Okay. Right, back to the information needed by the steering board. There will undoubtedly be a need to do some kind of detailed assessment, okay, aimed at determining whether to pursue the project, so delay, not necessarily stop, or shut the project down to completely abandon it. Right. Of course, there are many reasons, as I intimated before, but let's focus on the question in hand, that is from a CM point of view, all right, which certainly narrows things down quite a bit, to be honest, all right. I would contend that there would be arguments and counter arguments about what is and what isn't a change management reason. With such an important decision to make, at stake even, I think everyone will be fighting their own corner and pointing fingers in every direction apart from their own. All right. I will also say at this point that I think it's highly unlikely that a project would be abandoned purely for change management reasons. So it will necessarily be a combination of factors from all over, all right, that would cause this scenario. Right, back to the question. From a change management perspective, I have chosen, based on my experience, three main reasons that would make me want to raise the decision, the issue of a delay or project abandonment, okay, to the steering board. They are, number one, the business isn't ready. Basically, this can be determined by tracking how the business is progressing towards go live. This was actually one of the subjects of my first ever UAsk, IAnswer video, in which I gave an explanation of what exactly business readiness was. But just as a reminder, because as they say in communication, it's worth repeating things if they're of interest, business readiness is the monitoring of specific areas, okay, of the business, such as leadership, communication, processes and procedures, training, data, etc., okay, through a survey which asks a number of pertinent questions, okay. The surveys are sent out in a predetermined cycle, to the same group of stakeholders that was selected in the first place, who are asked to provide a score against the same set of questions and against a predetermined scoring mechanism. Okay. An agreed target score is also assigned at this stage. The ultimate aim of business readiness tracking is to achieve or be as close to the predetermined target score as possible to demonstrate readiness for go live. Depending on what your target score is and how far away you are from the score, there will be a contributing factor to delay or abandon a project. Let me give you an example. Okay, in one of the projects I was involved in back in the UK, the target score was agreed at 4.5 out of a possible 5. Okay, and business readiness monitoring showed steady progress towards that figure over the preceding months. All right, but the final overall score 1 month before go live was 4.2. Obviously that fell just short. Right, the steering board deliberated on this, but having looked at all of the individual scores across the areas I mentioned before, okay, they came to the conclusion that the 4.2 score was acceptable, so they went live and the go live was successful. Number 2, there's just too much resistance. Okay, this is quite an interesting one really, because as a change manager, it's your job, yeah, to minimize resistance. And if the resistance is at such a level, there is a consideration to delay the project, yeah, or abandon it, then I'm sorry to say you haven't done your job very well, have you? Right. Resistance can be both overt in your face or covert, hidden. If it's overt, it's kind of easy to manage because it's there, it's in front of you, etc. However, if it's covert, then this can present a big challenge, mainly because you will need to flush out where it's coming from, okay, and the reasons behind the resistance. That is not an easy task, I can assure you. I've done it a few times and it's difficult because people don't want to tell you upfront why they're resisting. Also, the level of resistance would have to be pretty damn considerable across all impacted stakeholders for this to be considered as one of the prime reasons either to delay or abandon a project. Just thinking back, I can only think of one project that I was involved in where there was an amount of resistance that, if it weren't managed, yeah, could have caused a delay. This project was the subject of video 2. It seems like ages ago now. Okay. I actually kept, would you believe, all of the messages, emails I received that voiced disapproval from the project. And I thought it would be interesting just to share a few. Right. First one, please listen to advice based on bottom-up experience rather than try and impose top-down ideas which seem to have been developed from a limited knowledge of how the work gets done. Okay. Updating this system, this is the second one by the way, updating this system will rapidly become a chore that no one remembers unless prompted. And just another distraction from casework and other mainstream activities. What's that good old phrase that's the scourge of change managers? We've always done it that way. All right, the third one. This is a classic example of technology for the sake of it. If this is an example of a new inclusive and consultative approach of the department, then it has been an unmitigated disaster. Oh, to be a change manager. It's kind of good fun, isn't it, when you're faced with resistance like that? Okay. Despite this level of hostility, And that's what it was, pure hostility. Yeah, it was managed. Yeah, it's in the video I mentioned earlier, and the project went live as planned. All right, third reason, people have not been adequately trained. Now, this might be kind of late in the day, depending on how you've scheduled your training, but it is definitely a reason or a factor to consider in the delay or abandonment process. The key is, like any business readiness, to monitor the effectiveness of your training to make sure everybody is fully equipped as possible to be able to run with the new ways of working. One more example. I do like my examples. In a recent project, last year, yeah, I think it was last year actually, we implemented a pre and a post training assessment process whereby pre-training, everyone was asked 10 questions, all right, and given 4 answers for each question, of which they had to select the correct answer. Great. These were then analysed, right, and scored for each individual, so many out of 10, whatever, right. Post-training, the individuals were then asked the same questions again and asked again to select the correct answer. Unfortunately, in many cases, the post-training scores were lower, than the pre-training scores, which prompted me to raise this as a red risk to the steering board, okay, and a potential showstopper. As you can imagine, didn't go down very well with the steering board, and I was subsequently asked not to attend any more steering boards. Okay, that's the way it goes sometimes. I think I mentioned this in my last video, can't remember. Following this situation, a series of retraining modules were implemented for those whose post-training scores did not meet the 80% correct answers that required to show that the training had been successful. This could have been the case for a project delay had I not managed to persuade program project management to bring forward the training by 1 whole month. Previous training was a month before go live. I suggested that they bring it forward by a month, so we had a bit of contingency, if you like, all right? Obviously, this allowed time to implement then the retraining sessions in the last month to get everybody skilled up in the new ways of working. We did go live despite this, but not without a few adoption and usage issues, obviously. Right, my final parting shot. In my experience, steering boards are more inclined and likely to listen and take note of program and project management on financial issues or reasons in relation to delay or abandonment rather than change management issues, although they will be part of the process. What are your thoughts about that? For me, I kind of, in my experience, that's what I've experienced. In my experience, that's what I've experienced. Okay, what a good point to end on, eh? Okay, that's it. Another one done and dusted. Don't forget, subscribe, get notified, etc., etc., etc. I will see you again next week. Bye.